And we're back with another edition of the Cosmic Crossfire, a special edition of the Cosmic Crossfire, because something actually very special came up this week in pop culture. And, well, he's back again to discuss something really, really big and the ramifications of it. He is the man, the myth, the legend behind Rob McCallum Films, here today to discuss the big mega deal between Disney and also, actually, Disney purchasing Fox Films and a whole lot more. It's Rob McCallum. What's going on, my friend?
Well, I just thought we should take a few moments outside our regular scheduled recording time and talk about this landmark deal that will reshape the entire entertainment terrain, pop culture or otherwise. The way in which we get content forever changes as we see Disney merge with 21st Century Fox and acquire their film library and television assets. Of course, Fox still going to have Fox broadcasting on their own.
And their Fox News, because
Their Fox News, FS1, Big Ten channel, all the television side, except for FX, which is going to Disney, National Geographic, which is going to Disney. All the broadcast channels on Fox, though, are not part of the deal, so they're still on their own. But everything else comes to the House of Mouse and forever changes the cultural landscape. It ends media empire that has been building and building for years to come and is the culmination of even Fox television broadcasting from the 80s when nobody said it had a chance to start up and compete with ABC, NBC, and CBS. And then with little shows here and there like Married with Children and The Simpsons. Now the empire has been dismantled and everything is going to Disney, including, and I think maybe most importantly, with where we look at the future landscape of everything, Fox's stake in Hulu, which was roughly about 30%, now goes to Disney, who is looking to do their own streaming service. So we'll have to keep our eyes on the future and the status of Hulu and how that might shift given Disney's new power and muscle that they have to flex.
Well, that's so much easier a transition on the surface if they want to go that route with Hulu and just transform it into their own channel that they were discussing and just rename it and repackage it if they wanted to go that route. But I wanted to make sure everybody knows out there. I know speculation we had talked about before was about $60 billion. The actual price right now listed is $52.4 billion for the transaction that was made, correct?
$52.4 billion. There is a lot of stock that is changing hands too. So some of that isn't just cash. It is stock considerations where executives from Fox will become major stakeholders in Disney. I think it's rumored that they will have as much as 5% in Disney by the time that it's all said and done, the Murdoch Group, and that some of those higher up Fox executives will be offered Disney positions as executives, still overseeing the Fox portion of the assets and libraries, probably at least through the transitionary period, which may or may not honor some of the deals that are in flux right now, of course, and that's where we talk about all the stuff that we're excited about.
And I also wanted to mention that along with that, the president of Disney, Bob Iger, actually stays in his chair as chairman until at least 2021, which removes speculation, any speculation that he was going to go for the president of the United States, which had been rumored as far as him being one of those leading candidates for that position.
Yeah, he has extended his deal by 2 years, going from 2019 to 2021, thanks to some quick math there. And he will now oversee the biggest media empire on the planet. And you could argue that his position at the helm of the Disney entity is bigger than a chair at the White House. He has more reach, more control, can affect more people with another deal with the sake of content that's going to come out in that duration than he might be able to affect as the president. So it's not that surprising, maybe, if he's looking to continue to hang on to the reins of power, that he's deciding to stay with the Walt Disney Company.
It's definitely something very intriguing indeed, and there's going to be a lot of speculation going forward exactly what Disney will be doing with those Fox properties. Obviously, on the surface, everybody just seems to be pointing towards the obvious, which is the bringing back home of many of the Marvel properties to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I mean, that's obviously a given in many ways, shape, or form, except for the Fantastic Four, which is still kind of tied up in limbo because I think there are other rights holders to the Fantastic Four besides Fox, correct?
Yeah, we talked about Constantine Films being the other stakeholder in the Fantastic Four franchise. They had struck a deal with Marvel Entertainment, I believe, back in the day in '86, which is what led to the Roger Corman film that got produced in '94. That never saw the light of day, and then they teamed up with Fox in '97 or so, and Fox retained distribution rights in perpetuity in the same way that Fox had distribution rights for Star Wars Episode 4 in perpetuity, even though they didn't produce it. Same thing here with this in Fantastic Four. Constantine Films owned the production rights. They would maintain the ability to produce films, but Fox would maintain the ability to distribute them. Now, what that means going forward is both sides have to agree if another entry is going to come out there. So Constantine Films can produce as many Fantastic Four films as they want, but if Disney, now the rights holder of the distribution deal, doesn't want it to release, it doesn't ever have to be released. So inevitably, Constantine Films can produce it and hang on to the rights, but they'll just be spending money all the time to keep those rights valid, and it'll never get out there unless Disney wants it to get out there the right way.
So you'll actually end up possibly seeing a deal going forward with Constantine Films to bring Fantastic Four at some point down the road back to Marvel as well.
I would speculate that you would see that deal get ironed out if that isn't the case. And now that a lot of that is just conjecture based on what we've been able to put together in the most recent weeks about who owns what and to what degree. Fantastic Four was named in the Disney press release as another Marvel entity coming back into the fold. But whether that means the full rights to produce and exploit or just the distribution rights was unclear. The bigger thing, too, Fox had in perpetuity the distribution rights for the Star Wars films, episodes 2 through 6 in perpetuity. That, of course, comes back through Disney. Disney was able to release it because of a deal that they had already struck with Fox when they bought Lucasfilm. But Fox had the original distribution rights to episode 4, we knew, and then had signed another deal with Lucasfilm that would basically cover episodes 2 through 6. Interestingly enough, and now those rights go back to Disney.
Just very awesome news to hear, and I know, like I said, we touched on Marvel being that key entity in this acquisition, but there is so much more to delve out and to weed through in this that you and I possibly couldn't even go through like 3 Cosmic Crossfires to talk about, but there are some major entities other than the Marvel prospects. So I ask you, Rob, with all that taken in, what is maybe one property you're leaning towards as far as being another key component of this acquisition by Disney?
Well, there are 2 big acquisitions, 2 cards that Disney can hold in their wallet now that I think are pretty sizable to get their own slot, so to speak. And the first one would be The Simpsons. This is the longest running animated show of all time. The streaming rights just went for millions of dollars when it came to FX to get that deal signed when they're recording other places and other venues. Disney now has that in their fold as they look to build a streaming library and as they're looking for that friendly, evergreen, renewable, never get old TV kind of content for their streaming service. They can have The Simpsons alongside any of their own content. With almost 30 seasons now of The Simpsons, that gives them a lot of episodes and exclusivity to put them exactly where they want them and a card that they can tout that nobody else will ever be able to touch.
You mentioned 2, so I was like on pins and needles. Like, you mentioned 2.
Well, the other one, of course, would be the Avatar franchise. Now, the only reason I mention this is because Disney is heavily invested in it on the theme park side with Pandora Worlds of Avatar just opening up this year at Animal Kingdom. But we know that first film was a multi-billion-dollar generating project, and with 4 more set to come, Disney really positions themselves to rake in a lot of money. But it will be even equally interesting to see how much Disney maybe tightens the purse strings on what happens or what doesn't happen. I mean, Fox could maybe really dodge a bullet here and not have to foot the bill to this unknown commodity in terms of it being a franchise, and save a lot of money that they had committed to with James Cameron. But that's the other nice thing, right? You bring an Avatar as an asset, you also get James Cameron into the Disney fold. And now you got to start to wonder, if Avatar goes well with James Cameron, could we see James Cameron do possibly a Star Wars film? I think the relationships are there. The people are all in place, and you never know what can happen now that everybody is getting basically paid from the same bank account.
Well, you and I discussed previously on another episode of the Cosmic Crossfire that I still thought it was still, at least in the sequel, $1 billion franchise. So at least that, to me, is still on the table with Disney and Fox, as far as being something that in the short term can still garner a great deal of money. Long term, like both you and I agree, that it's still very much up in the air. Still very much up in the air. But I still think that Avatar can be a great property, and also as well also be something that can be represented at their theme parks like it is already, and even more so all around the world with their theme parks all over, because we can't just consider Disney World or Disneyland when we're considering this acquisition. Representation by these Fox properties can take place all over the world, and they can variate it how they please, correct?
Yeah, exactly. It's not just localized to North America. And as we further expand and see the dominance of international box office, you will see Disney continue to stoke those fires in China and in Japan with Tokyo Disney, and the possibility of another Disney park entering China to help basically propagate more ticket sales over there. It's all very possible. Now, the downside of all this is you get one massive studio that gets to dictate how much gets out there, and I think you're going to see less films reach the box office. You're going to see more demanding terms in order to exhibit these films, as we saw with Star Wars The Last Jedi, and what exhibitors had to go through in order to guarantee that that film played on their property. You're going to see a lot other companies maybe get gobbled up or disband as a result, I think, right away. But Blue Sky Animation, which is known for the film that's coming out, Ferdinand, with John Cena, they had done the Ice Age films. Do they even have a place anymore, given that they were tied to Fox Animation and Sony to some degree, but mainly Fox Animation, knowing that Pixar and Disney Animation are part of that conglomerate? So what is their future, and who might they have to partner up with if they want to survive? Maybe not Universal, who does a lot of their work with Illumination so far. So look to see a lot of announcements like that, and a lot of studio closures and company closures as a result of this too. This is not necessarily a good deal when you give that much power to very few people.
This is true, but there are some other entities that they have that are in their own ways very enticing for Disney to now be representing. The Home Alone franchise, Ice Age franchise, obviously Deadpool 2 with the sequel coming out, that will now be a true Marvel films property, and there are a few more major issues as far major properties that they have that people have come familiar with, both on the TV side and also on the film side. Indeed, outside of just the Star Wars, Avatar, and Marvel franchises that they own already. Even the Kung Fu Panda, that Kung Fu Panda is something that has endeared fans now for quite some time, and that even can be considered something that can be now brought into the fold with the Disney acquisition as something that now can
Is that not DreamWorks though?
Well, Kung Fu Panda 3, it was distributed by Fox, so you tell me as far as rights for that going forward. Any TV shows, because remember they had a TV show, they also had films, but it was distributed by 20th Century Fox, so the rights to distribute it go over to Disney.
Possibly. Maybe it'll get canceled, maybe it'll get canned, and maybe that'll be done. Again, with DreamWorks having so many output deals through Netflix and Disney now owning maybe some of those properties or distribution rights, that could get completely rewritten. Who's to
But
say? I mean, the other thing to think about how things get out there, going
but
back to
also,
the Avatar stuff, is that
but
Avatar 2 is set for December 17th,
but
2021.
yeah, yeah. But also as well that Kung Fu Panda may now be, you know, somehow or some way easier acquired by Disney, maybe to go ahead and be a popular part of their theme parks, or even again running another TV show onto their own streaming network, just as an additional thing. Or not just the possibilities now for that coming within the Disney franchise is something to think about as well. But there are other properties I'm sure that they're looking at and going over with a fine-tooth comb that's saying maybe we can revive, maybe we can expound upon, and maybe we can also look to make better deals with whoever if in case it's just a property like Kung Fu Panda that we're just distributing. So that's definitely a lot to chew on there. And over the coming weeks, I know we're going to get more speculation on it as well, and also more news as it filters out on this impactful deal within pop culture. But Rob, I got to ask you one last question. Ultimately, you indicated both the good and the bad about this acquisition for Disney. I want to ask you your personal thoughts, either which way. If you had to talk about it now, going forward for the future, is it the best thing for the public for Disney to have bought Fox properties?
I'm gonna have to go with the no, and I think it's just because it gives them too much power to control too much of what gets out there, and it really changes what the other studios are going to do, knowing that with Fox and their assets being part of the Walt Disney Company, we go from 6 major studios down to 5. It gives them an overwhelming minority kind of leadership in that race, and they're going to set the tone for what happens. So even though they might not get to greenlight everything that comes out of them, or their production gets reduced, we're also going to see a number of films that get affected by what they choose to release. So Universal and Paramount and Warner Brothers are going to be watching how Disney releases things, and as a result of what Disney decides to release, it's going to alter their schedule as well. So there's going to be a domino effect because of this, and vice versa. Anytime that power gets consolidated, and remember, this still has to get approved, and it has to go through regulations, and the
Yeah.
unions still have to bless all this. So there is that little the regulations in DC has to still get approved. But with this much money at stake, I'm sure some palms have been greased for everything to happen.
Not mine, man. Not mine. Where's
Yeah.
mine?
Yeah, it's not all. Believe me, Disney wants you to think that yes, the X-Men are back in the Marvel universe. Be happy about that. You're not going to see the fallout of that, and this is going to take 12 to 18 months before you really actually get to see things take hold, where this is the new era going forward, and this is the true effect of the deal. It's going to take a year to a year and a half before we really see this power actually get enforced upon everybody, because there are deals in the works. There is going to have to be severances if people get laid off. People are going to get moved around a bit and reorganized. I mean, Disney did respect the structure of Lucasfilm. They respected the structure of Pixar. I'm not so sure on the Marvel side of things, but I believe they intend to allow the Fox stuff to run as Fox, and then over the next 12 to 18 months, make it a little bit more Disneyfied and bring it in under the umbrella to make it profitable and run the way that they should.
I agree with you on that. That they will. It will be a slow burn as far as it's concerned, and we won't see the true fruits of that labor as far as a whole entity. Probably 2-3 years down the line before it really materializes in 100% way. And I think when you see that Disney streaming service, whether they reform Hulu or they have Hulu there and they create their own, I still think that by that time, you'll actually end up seeing a lot more of that influence from this acquisition that was finalized just this week. So definitely something to think about. And for me, all I can say is, yeah, it does bring down the number of major studios from 6 to 5. But to me, I still think it was, for the long term, probably the best thing going forward, because I don't think 20th Century Fox was being run all that well. I think there were they have all these properties and they have all these things within their environment of their TV and their film properties that they have something to do with it, they know, they kind of think they know what to do with, but ultimately, for the most part, it's been a hit and miss at best. FX has done, I think, pretty good for them. The Simpsons obviously has been a big hit for them over the past 30 years, but I think there's lots of other things, lots of areas of improvement that they could work upon, and I think that ultimately it could be packaged better, and I think in the right hands, in this case, Disney's hands, I think that'll come to fruition in many more ways than what would have been done if it had just stayed status quo.
Now, here's the real question, right? We saw Disney pay $4 billion for both Pixar and Lucasfilm, and I think they paid $7 billion for Marvel. Are those numbers sounding right to you?
The 4 and 4 is, I think 7 is correct for Marvel, but I'm not entirely sure. I can look that up.
Star Wars Force Awakens, they made their $4 billion back basically on that right away with one film. If not, by the time Rogue One had come along, they had made it back with merchandising and ticket sales and DVD sales. So Lucasfilm has been covered with the cost that they chose to put out for that. Pixar, I believe, has made back their money. I mean, look at what's happening with Coco alone, let alone the last 3 or 4 years with Pixar. And they're back in the fold now, so it hasn't cost Disney any money there. Marvel, we know it's just a money printing machine, even if it is as high as $7 billion for the rights to all those characters. They have easily made more than $7 billion with the Avengers franchise alone. It seems there's $4 billion for Marvel by the looks of it, is what Gerald's telling me through the video feed. So we know that basically on the Avengers films alone, they broke even there, let alone everything else that's come out at Iron Man and Captain America. So the question I've got to you financially, $52.4 billion. We know some of it's stock, so nothing comes out of the bank account necessarily on that. It's a trade for trade, a paper loss, if you will. How long is it going to take for Disney to make up that money? And are they going to be cash strapped and not be able to go forward with other productions because their coffers have been streamed a little bit?
Actually, I think it's going to be at least 10 years before they see the true measure of success or failure with this purchase. I think this is something that when you're dealing with so much cash on hand, and also as well stocks, acuities, futures, things of that nature, you're talking about a long-term deal and a long-term goal and a long-term stretch out before this finally comes to fruition, whether or not you've actually made money on the deal or you haven't. So I think it's going to take at least a decade before we find out for sure 100% whether or not this deal made this week was actually a good one or not. As far as what you're saying with the whole entity, as far as it's concerned, I get your concern with what it does for the Hollywood network and entertainment as a whole, and reduces the number of the opportunities on the surface, but I think new ones will grow from it, and whether it's from independent companies being formed and created because of this deal, or something being done by Disney to create new and other companies, I think that there will be opportunities had. It just will be a different landscape to work with than it was before.
I think they're going to have to put out a lot of content to make this money back. It's not as simple as them putting out 52 films that do $1 billion each. I think profitability, those films have to do about $500 million each, which means that they're probably going to, at the end of the day, rake in about $300 million. So do the quick math. That looks like $150, $300 million grossing films that they're going to have to put out. And when you start breaking it down like that, you see the assets that they have, I think you can easily come up with 150 different assets that fill or check that category, whether it's Avatar 1, like 2 through 5 being 4 of them, The Simpsons being another one, their stake in Hulu being another one, other Marvel entities like X-Men taking, 2 or 3 out of there. I think they'll make their money back. I think that 20 years is probably going to be closer, but all they have is time left. And more interesting, what is Murdoch going to do now with Fox News and Fox Broadcasting Network? How is that going to affect deals like that going forward? He's going to have a lot of money coming in to spend on that. Is he going to try to get the Super Bowl rights from CBS now so that Fox can be like the ultimate sports network, and even take a bit of the chip out of ESPN, which is, a crown jewel in the Disney empire? Is this going to come back to bite Disney on that side of things, with Murdoch freeing things up and being able to really invest in Fox News and the sports side?
We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, actually, I think Disney will be a little bit cash strapped over the course of the next couple of years, but I think it will all pan itself out. And I agree with you, Rob, in the sense that 10 years may be too soon, but I think we'll be starting to get a clearer idea in a decade, but the actual formality as far as whether or not this will be a great deal, I think, 20 years is also a safe bet as well to find that at in that 10 to 20-year range, we can actually gauge exactly whether or not Disney and Fox did actually make a good deal and who actually won it out overall.
Sounds good. Well, that's just my take on it. I thought it was important that we would break our scheduled recording time and chime in on this as the news is fresh and hot, and as people kind of understand what this is and how this is going to affect things going forward.
Absolutely, indeed. If you want to share your thoughts on the Disney Fox mega deal, please share your thoughts with us at Rob McCallum Films, Pop Culture Cosmos, Game Source, and Humanica Media on Facebook and Twitter as well. And we truly appreciate, Rob, you stepping back in on this major news to discuss thoughts on this mega deal. And we hopefully will be able to get you on next week with your good friend Jay and talking some Last Jedi and thoughts on the movie itself.
I look forward to it.
I do too as well. Appreciate it. Thank you so much for stepping into the Cosmic Crossfire.